Okay, since we're all friends, we could be clear. So this is the yeshiva of True Thought, the only yeshiva of True Thought in Lakewood, possibly in the Western Hemisphere. And what's the goal of True Thought? The goal is to be a person that has true thoughts. That's the goal. And that means that each thought or each book that you read or each year that we have is supposed to be steiging. That's the yeshivish word for it. But I don't know what they mean when they say it. But steiging means that the person you were when you entered the Masechta is not the same person as you are when you exited it. Right? So this is the basic premise of virtue ethics, where instead of saying what do we get out of learning, as if there is some kind of getting that's supposed to be external to you, and it's supposed to get okay, we'll get money, so that's something the bank will get, very nice, or some ability you'll have or something. But the question, or you can ask what's the duty, different ways, right? But the question that the old-fashioned Jews would ask is somewhat selfish, but the question, the selfishness is wrong. But it's really, what kind of person will I become from this? Right? And that's why the only way to evaluate it, to decide, or at least one only way, to decide if this is a good thing, right? Do I want to do something, meaning is it good? What do I have out of it? You change that question into, how is it good? Is it good? Is it a good thing? Is it good for me? But is it good? Will this make me into the kind of person that I want to be, or that it's good to be, or a person that is kind of person that it's good to be? And then we get into the question of what is a good person. And the way to see it, that's why in the ancient way of teaching, it's not possible to learn anything without a teacher. Because a teacher has many functions. But the first function is that if you meet a guy and you see, okay, I want to be more like him, maybe not entirely, maybe he has some problems too, but at least in some aspect of him, I want to be more like him. And he's presenting you, this is what I'm selling, be more like me. Now, how do you become more like me? Okay, I'll tell you. Depends, each teacher has different things. One guy says you go to the mikvah a lot. Another guy says you got to sit on top of a mountain and cross your legs and watch the moon. Different things. But the point is always, the goal, the way it's formed is we're going to be more like me, or like that person, or like this ideal. Make sense? Leonard Cohen said, he had a teacher, this Zen monk, I forgot what his name was. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
No?
Leonard Cohen's teacher?
Yeah, doesn't follow. Leonard Cohen was a Buddhist, some kind of Buddhist at some point.
Dalai Lama?
No. There was a guy, no. There was a guy in California, I forget his name, old Japanese Zen guy, and he was his teacher. And he says, so what he was a teacher, he taught Zen stuff, which is Sitz und die Gur nicht. That's Zen. Sit and do nothing. Even unlike other Buddhist people would say sit and you'll be enlightened. No, just sit. That's all. That's the instruction. Do that for 2 hours a day, or however long. And at some point he decided that it's not for him to sit, and he's going to just write poems in that time, and he would go into the meditation hall and write his songs. But anyways, and he says, why am I doing this weird thing? I'm a Jewish kid. I should be studying Daf Yomi. I'm putting on tefillin. She did sometimes too. And what's this deal with this? Why am I going? And he was in the monastery for a few years. At some point he gave up on singing and went to the monastery. And he's like, what am I doing? So he said, look, I like this guy. I think he's a great guy. This Mr. I forget his name. And whatever he's doing, that's what I want to be doing. He said if he would have been a physicist or something in some university, I would have went and studied physics. Happens to be that the guy that I like doesn't study physics. He does Zen stuff.
Maybe that's why you like it.
That's what I'm trying to get at. That's what he said. He said, if he would have been a professor in the University of Heidelberg or whatever, I would have went there and done the course that he teaches. Since he's a Zen master, so I do Zen master stuff.
It's not about the subject, it's about the person.
Yeah, it's not like I was convinced that this is the true way of life, religion, and some like thing. I saw this person. He had something that I don't have, right? What does he have? The kind of person that he is, right? The kind of way he interacts with the world, or maybe the kind of calmness he has, or the kind of whatever it is that he was missing, that person had. And he said that I'm going after him. I think that's a very good illustration for this like flipped way of doing things. Instead of like, I want to get, this is why, something that bothers me, you talked about roles. We have this concept of professionalism, like professional ethics. It's like a whole way of being a human being. Like, for example, if you think about it, and this is very old, this change. It's not, all the changes that we pretend happened yesterday really have very deep roots. For example, if you learn Hilchos Talmud Torah, okay, the Rambam wrote Hilchos Talmud Torah, and Hilchos Talmud Torah has two mitzvahs, which are
to teach your son Torah and to hire a Lamed, right?
no. There's two mitzvahs that Hilchos Talmud Torah are consist of. One is to learn Torah and to teach it. It's the one mitzvah that's actually only to teach, but in order to teach, you have to learn, so you have to learn it. So that's a different thing. Yeah, that's not like a mitzvah, that's like a halach. That's not a halach. It is separate, but it's not. But the other one is to respect teachers of Torah, to honor them, right? Kibbut Talmidei Chachamim. That's the mitzvah.
That's the mitzvah of what? Talmud Torah?
Yeah, there's like two mitzvahs. Hilchos Talmud Torah, like every halacha is built out of different mitzvahs. There's these two mitzvahs: to learn Torah, or to teach Torah, and to honor and respect the people that teach Torah. And these two things don't seem to be related enough in our mind. It's like, okay, I guess it would be nice to respect the guy that teaches you, or maybe there's other values in it, but it's not like...
One second. With all due respect, I was only here once, and I get the general gist. Do you feel that, or you're saying certain rabbis, you don't consider them Torah?
No, I'm not saying we should respect anyone. Just a tradition. Why? Who's not Torah?
Well,
no.
I mean, we don't, like, there's a lot of people that, we don't necessarily believe that, like, like you're saying that's Torah. I mean, you don't have the same views of everybody in Lakewood of what's
okay.
Torah. So do you feel that you have to respect those people as well?
No. You should respect every person, but that's different.
No, meaning in terms of Talmud Torah. I didn't mean to be on the spot.
No, I'm not sure if it's... No, I don't know. I don't see... It's not connected to what I'm trying to think of.
But meaning...
Whatever the truth, forget... I'm not sure. Maybe you're meaning... I'm not... I don't get... let me finish. What I'm trying to say something... I was just using this as an illustration for something. What I'm trying to say is that this is something... I think that in Lakewood they don't either respect the people teach Torah. That's what I'm trying to get at. Not whether they teach Torah or not, that's a different question. Very serious question. But maybe it's connected to this, maybe not. There's other problems. But the point is we're making is like this, that it used to be assumed, and again, it used to be a very, very long time ago in a very distinct way. There's many different steps of it separating each other. It used to be assumed that the person that teaches you is like an integral part of the teaching. In other words, Hilchos Talmud Torah, learning Torah wouldn't work without this second mitzvah of respecting or honoring the people that teach you Torah. And there's actually like two parts of that. There's respecting the person that taught you, and there's respecting people that teach in general, which is like, I'm not sure which one is primary and which one is secondary. There's like lambdas that think about this, but there's like two things. The point I'm making is that what that means is, and for example, then we have like things like, if he is not the person that should be respected, maybe you can't learn from him. And that is very different from what we have now in many ways, which is something like the people that we actually let drive our life. We don't think that we have to, or that it makes even sense to honor them as people. Makes sense? For example, I'll give you a simple example. Okay, in Judaism, there's a guy called the judge. Don't curse judges. The judge is like supposed to be the guy that organizes the traffic lights, decides when they should be red and when they should be green. Isn't that the job of a bezdin? Saknim sadrachim, sechtas shkolim. The judge is the guy that decides how much money everyone should make. Well, I don't know about that, but if that's full communism. The guy that like decides who owes money to who, things like that, right? That's a judge. Judge, like a bezdin. Now, in tradition, the person who is the bezdin is in some sense the most honored, right? The most valued, the most looked up to person in the community, or one of the most looked up people, right? He needs a lot of respect. Like if you curse him, it's very bad. Like I said, l'him lo yisakala. If you disrespect him, that's a baya. He has to be a seriously good person. Nowadays, we don't even know who those people are.
And people who do make those decisions.
Yeah. And to the extent that we do, nobody really thinks that those people are the most, need to be like the biggest tzaddikim, right? Like turns out that there's people that, at least in like traditional world, that fulfill the like role of like people to be valued, like models for other people, and they're never the judges. In other words,
But the people that occupy today's roles of admiration.
Yeah. Like for example, if you for something like this, if you're you know who's in like secular world, whatever it's so-called secular world, but we all live in the same way. The people that are actually admired, in other words, the people that are models for other people. Remember the concept of a model. Human beings are imitative beings and learn by modeling other people. The people that are models are who?
Celebrities.
Yeah. There's all kinds of celebrities. But celebrity is the word that we have for someone that other people want to be. Right?
Celebrate.
A celebrity is someone that we want to be like. Sorry. And then there's different ways of relating to them, and do you buy their stuff, or do you go to their events, or what exactly you do? But that's the people that we. Do what?
Are they revered in a human way?
Well, in reality, yeah. In other words, people grow up to say, I want to be like that. Maybe it's not accessible, maybe it's way beyond, there's all kinds of things, but that's like the aspiration or the goal. That's a battle.
I want to be like Henry.
I mean, who? I mean, people dress like you.
Like
dress.
that's called I want to be like.
It's what they do. You dress like them, and people are interested in everything about their life, right? Sometimes they don't like it, but that's just what the job is, right? You don't get to say no, really. I mean, it's interesting, right? You have, I mean, you know, you have how's it called? The photographers that go around, the paparazzi chasing, actors and singers and things like that, and it makes no difference to your life what the guy does with his free time. I mean, we should have someone chasing the mayor of Lakewood who actually decides how many roads there should be. We should find out what he eats for supper. Maybe it makes a difference, and that seems to be more important, right?
It's like a reason why you should respect the judges, like a societal function, because if you don't respect the judges, then, if you break down laws, exactly, do like a breakdown in society.
Yeah, we say things like that, but I think there's something more than that. There's something more which we don't have now, because what we have now is something like this. Something like that ideal. Now, most serious people say, well, celebrities are nice, but they're not serious people. We don't actually respect them. It's funny. Like, we want to be like them, but we don't think they're good people. Nobody thinks they're good people, right? I hope not. Yeah, I mean, it's somewhat confusing.
When they die, they don't talk about the fact that they're celebrities. They talk about the fact
That they were good people?
Generally, it's really stupid.
And that means that what?
That they don't ultimately think you can respect that part of them. They would be much embarrassed to get up and say that.
I don't know.
I mean, you have like
Complicated.
Kobe Bryant died. Everyone said he was such a good father, and he's devoted to his thing, which is a general good character trait. And
Okay, I don't know how it works. I think that in the like so-called from world, there's also celebrities, and they have the same problem, although it doesn't look the same way.
They maybe say bad things about them.
Oh, you don't?
That's good.
Who?
In the firm world.
No, who are the celebrities?
All sorts of people. Business tycoons of different stripes and colors.
Yeah, that's
Askanim.
Basically, anyone that can be on the cover of the Mishpacha is
Yeah.
a celebrity. And it's never a person that actually does anything serious. Or if it is, it's not for that reason. Right? Now, what I was trying to say is that there's something weird going on. Like we have something else. We have a solution to this problem called professionalism. And professionalism is something.
Solution to the problem of not having like
of not having correct attachment or like you
and
don't
connections with
think.
teachers.
Yeah, in other words, so there's a separation between the person and the like thing, or the thing they're doing, or the thing they're
Professor and
teaching,
subject.
or the thing they're leading. Yes, exactly. For example, you have something, and I start talking about judges because it's easier, little less controversial. But we have something called therapists, and therapists are basically like the most serious thing you could call a rebbe or a teacher or someone in that role of like. In other words, what they used to call, a doctor of souls, right? It's like a doctor for your body who tells you how to lead your body. There's people that how to lead your soul, and it doesn't make a difference if you believe in a soul or not. What I mean by soul is whatever it is that makes you human and good and things like that. And the people that are closest to fulfilling that role, or actually some of them officially fulfill this role, are therapists or psychologists and things like that. And therapists have this rule, which they see as like the ethical imperative for them. And they're right in the way they work, which is that their relationship with you, or the way that they're being the doctor for your soul, is by not being a human being to you. It's by like having this role, like you get 50 minutes to sit in my couch, and it makes no difference what I do in the rest of my life. I don't care what you do. Maybe I do care what you do in the rest of your life, which is somewhat asymmetrical. But you're not supposed to even know like who I am, and there's like this whole thing that you're not supposed to know anything about their personal life.
Especially
And
the
sometimes they
Freudians
try.
and Kleinians and those-
Yeah, there's machlokes about this, but in some sense it's generally accepted this way. Like he's not supposed to talk about himself, not supposed to know about him. And what he's supposed to do is something like in other words, something like an ethical, and it's even unethical to do that, right? And like the ethical one is the one who like fulfills his role correctly. Like there's like some kind of objective like job. I'm supposed to listen to you. I'm supposed to validate you or not validate you, or do whatever modality of therapy I'm doing. And you don't care about me as a person. I don't care about you as a person.
Just the practice.
And you don't pick them. You don't pick them for the person they are.
Yeah. Is he a good person, the therapist? Like, does he steal? Does he have self-control? I don't know, all kind of things that you're basically going to him to teach you, right? And who knows if he does? I mean, obviously he has enough to be like a functioning human being and like to have a job. So that's some level of
Has no capacity to lie.
whatever it is. I'm not saying you have to be somewhat healthy, just like to have a practice and like to come on time to the appointment. Okay, but it doesn't have to be in any way a better person than you, or it doesn't have to be a model for you.
I one time went to a psychiatrist too, and yeah, it was like I guess there was like a weird dissonance by the fact that like, I guess it was more like one of these like critical personality types, and he would be like constantly late, and it's just funny. But there is something I think off-putting if you notice it overtly. Like I think the professionalism kind of helps make sure that no one exposes too many flaws all at once. And if they do, it's definitely asymmetrical, and it should be happening in meditation.
There's reasons for professionalism happening, and there's good ways and bad ways of doing it, just like there's good ways and bad ways of being any kind of role that humans ever invented. But it's seen as some kind of like like some kind of problem if it's too much of a human thing. Like some maybe like you stepped out of the bounds of what you're supposed to be doing. It's true in many other ways, like even for a teacher that teaches you, right? Like a professor. And we have all kind of rules and all kind of scandals about how it should work and things like that. But the basic like premise is that a professor is supposed to be someone who like knows the material, knows how to teach it, hopefully also, and is doing that and nothing else, nothing more, nothing less.
Do you think what you're saying is a new concept, or meaning because I feel like back in the day, people used to respect these people, meaning they were expected to have a certain level of morality as well.
Yeah, it's complicated. Nowadays, there's also a kind of, but I don't know how new it is. I think it's very old in some sense.
What, the disassociation with the teacher and the thing being taught?
Yeah, as a person.
I think in some cases it is true, and I think depending on the subject, the teacher can play a more passive or active role in the, and necessarily has to play a more passive or active role in the teaching, right?
Okay.
I mean, it also depends on what's being taught. Like if it's a teacher of virtue, let's say, if it's a teacher of mathematics, I don't necessarily want him to be a number or a
You do want him to be a number. I actually do. I want the teacher of mathematics to be a number. At least to know how to be a number, you know.
But the guy teaching mathematics probably is a number, though.
Usually. Well, no, what you would say something is like, well, depending on how you understand mathematics, he has to be the kind of person who allows numbers to enter through his soul to you, or something like that.
Okay.
Okay, taking like a Pythagorean, Platonic way of saying it.
Between
Yeah.
the knowledge and the
Yeah.
memory.
And all of any, and there's the ways of being not allowing that to happen, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this even happens. You know how far it goes. It goes so far that we have something called parenting as a subject that you're supposed to be able to be taught, like how to be a good parent. And like a good parent, like is supposed to there's supposed to be like tips or like peer books and courses and who knows what. And it's like, well, I know that you're a horrible human being and all kind of things, but you're gonna try to be a good parent. Which is what? Whatever. I don't even know what do they do. What do they talk about by those tips?
FTL.
What?
Most of these books just don't want you to hit your kids.
Okay.
That's all they're trying to get at, I think.
No, they want stuff. And we have the same, we have this
In the British sense.
professionalization or cutting up, how do you say,
Make it clinical.
of everything. There's relationship advice and and all these advice are needed. But the problem is that there's only one way of doing it, like wholly, in a whole way, right? And the only way to do it is to not be a whole bunch of different things. It's to say what kind of person is a good parent. And it's true that a person is a very complicated thing. Oh, we have to get to the Republic. Anyways, what kind of...
You don't think there could be someone that's a good person but a bad parent?
No. The answer is no. Meaning to say... No, I actually think no. I actually think that there's no good people that are bad parents.
Really?
Because there would be bad people.
You think that makes you a bad person if you have a lack of capacity? Assuming that being a parent is a kind of person, right? There's different kinds of people, and there's different, being a person is a complicated thing. Because when we say a person, like I said, you can look at someone, I want to be that person, but I don't want to be that person. Do I want to be my father? That's a serious question, and there's nowhere, you're going to be your father anyways. But you might as well want to. Do you want to be that person? Now, I think when people say he's a great person, but he's a horrible father, I feel like there's something wrong with that. I mean, of course, that means it's referring to something real. Right? He's good in some aspects and bad in some aspects. But that kind of person, which is to be a father, maybe the ideal world in some not realistic world would have people whose job is to be professional fathers. Well, not professional, to be the father, and another guy would be just Plato wants one guy to be the soldier, and this is where I want to get to. Another guy to be the farmer, and so on. Don't be this both, because you're just going to be confused.
Don't be the farmer and the soldier.
Yeah, Plato's whole. Well, I'm going to get to this. Try to get to this. This is where I'm getting into. But at least there's a kind of person called a parent, which, by the way, since parent is like a basic biological function of humans, I find it hard to believe that you could say, I think that we separate that because we live in this weird industrial world where we're basically living in Plato's republic where children are grown in pens and things. We just call them schools and things like that. But it's not so far from that.
Hyperclinical.
Yeah, like people always say, yeah, the kibbutz is nuts. They have like the children sleeping in different rooms. But we sort of do the same. Not as extreme, but that's just...
Children sleeping in different rooms?
And their families.
There used to be Bet Yiladim in the kibbutzim, where they're like, we're socialists, we're all living together. What's this? Like Plato, right? Why my children, not my children? They're just children of the community. And they would have like a children's, house where the children would live, and the parents' house where the parents would live.
Why that division instead of familial division?
Because the families are bourgeois invention and whatever. You don't know. Okay.
Right, I'm saying it's too nepotistic and whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I don't remember. The point is, the like logic of separation of like concerns and like doing one thing is happening. But I think, but it seems to me, it would seem to me that parenting is a weird thing to say. It's like a job. It's like I have a friend that get very mad when you say I'm babysitting my kids. Are you also like feeding yourself as oh sorry I have to feed this guy Yitzchok? Like that's just what you do. It's just like that's what it means to be a human being. And yeah, okay, you have some arrangement with your wife or whoever, that's beside it, but it's like babysitting your children, that's a weird thing to say. And by the way,
It's also very, but it is a very modern. I'm conscious very modern thing either.
what, babysitters?
I don't think you'll did that thing.
Yeah, you also don't have to watch them.
I don't think
That's
people
true.
did that thing.
You don't have to watch them. I don't watch my. I mean, whatever. Nowadays we have screens to give them and whatever.
I don't think that happened at all. Just that constant.
No, it's part of the same thing because now, since you think that like parenting is like this verb, and it's something you have to do, and now like, and now like you need to figure I can't just be doing my thing and my baby jumping around, which is what they used to do, supposedly. Who knows? Whenever we see someone used to do something, you have to be careful because we're not there and we don't know.
It's more,
But
a lot of it's a living setup.
I try to do that.
It's also a living setup, the way we live. So you can't really walk onto the street.
I understand. Yeah, it has to do with cars and all the things. Yeah, a lot of different things. Point is, yeah.
Also,
But
it comes to parenting.
that's what I'm saying. It all comes together to make this
Kids are
parenting
different to
into a
parenting.
job, and because you have to parent right, and since like the way to be a good parent is different than the way to be a good human, and I would say, like again, you could say like, is being a farmer being a good human? I don't know. Maybe not everyone has to be a farmer, but I would think that almost everyone has to be a parent. Maybe not literally everyone, but almost everyone is a parent, which means that part of the, remember the word shleimut? How do they call it in Greek? Intelike, right? The completeness of a thing, which is the goodness of that thing, right? The completeness of a human includes being a parent. Maybe that's even like one of the most important ones. And therefore, say that like someone could be a good human and a bad parent is more like what you really mean to say usually. I'm trying to think of examples of that. No, what you usually mean is that he's actually a bad person, but like a good Talmud Chacham or a good scientist or things like that. He's actually usually a pretty shitty person.
What I meant to say before was that when some people say bad parent, doesn't necessarily mean that like they act like mean or they abuse their kids. It could be neglect. It could be a lack of ability, to whatever. Doesn't necessarily make him a bad person.
To what?
I'm not saying that this guy's he's a good guy, but he's a bad parent. He abuses his
sure
wife and
lacking.
kids. Maybe
That
they're
guy's for
lacking.
sure
There are
lacking.
such
But
things.
But if
He doesn't
somebody's
have his
lacking, it
stuff
doesn't mean
together.
right. It
It's
doesn't mean
not-
he's a bad person. Meaning,
Well, in this definition,
I'm saying
I
that,
think he would be
that
considered
he's a bad. He's just a bad human being.
The guy
I'm
who's
trying to
not-
think, who is that person? There's two kinds of people that we say that
When
about.
you say a bad person, what we usually like
A
at
human
least
being has
I think
things in
part of
order
like
and
the
doesn't.
discussion,
He's a bad
if you want
human
to
being.
discuss like what it means to be a good person is to be someone who is as human as a person can be, right? Not human in terms of like the apathetic sense, but meaning you could be the most perfected version of a human being. If fathering, if we don't consider it to be like a separate kind of labor or a task, but if it's a part of being human, then if you're bad at being human in a very integral
You're just
way,
a bad person.
then
you're a person.
and whatever humans are, you're not doing that very well. You might be an excellent
pianist or whatever.
Yeah, or even an
Bus
excellent
driver,
sympathizer.
whatever.
Maybe you're an excellent sympathizer too, but that
Right.
being a good sympathizer and a
There's
good
two
parent
things.
might
There's
be
two things. There's two
means to
things.
be a
There's
good
two things.
person.
One is that, right? One is what you're saying. We usually when we say who are the people that we say that they're great guys but a bad father? I think usually there is guy is not a great guy at all. In other words, like he's great at some kind of specific, like let's say he's a great teacher but a very horrible father. Like he has this how do you call it? Like this profession or this capacity of he knows a lot of math or he knows a lot of Gemara or whatever it is, but he has no idea of how to be a father, which is like, is something lacking in his humanity. Like he's something like he has bad midas.
Especially because you just said neglect,
But the other thing, of course, is not neglect. Or I think the other thing people might mean with this is based on some kind of conception, and they're telling you the third thing, which is that there's some technique to being a good parent, which is the kind of things you learn in the parenting classes. Things like they're basically manipulation techniques. Don't tell anyone.
Jelly sandwich creation.
No, because that's like just being a good cook. You don't have to be a good cook to be a good parent. Everyone agrees with that.
It's like, when you cut the crust, it's like that's a holy act of parenting,
I hear. I don't know.
But and a lot of these things, like you go over to your child and scratch their head. If you don't, you might be messing them up.
I actually think that most of the kind of things they teach in parenting class are manipulation techniques. Meaning so what do you do when your baby doesn't want to go to sleep? And this is something that people feel that they're lost. How do I remember those?
They think that makes sense.
I wasn't taught this in the yeshiva. What do you do?
Number one, they think that makes them a bad person / parent.
I don't know if it makes you.
It might not at all be what.
I think that the answer is, well, firstly, you were supposed to have remember what your father did to you, and hopefully it wasn't crazy and he basically did the same thing. But also, okay, so what do you do? It's very weird because, I don't know why am I getting into this whole parenting discussion. But basically, my top level, my abstract level thing would be that maybe there might be techniques that can be learned or not. I usually think those techniques are evil. Nobody should use them because they're manipulation and you shouldn't even manipulate your own children most of the time. And what you should do is either get mad or just push them into bed, whatever, not complicated.
What?
What I mean to say is it's not, or just be nice and not do that. But it's going to depend.
Don't be Eiberchochem about it. Don't be like.
One second.
Don't be calculated. I don't like people that are calculated.
One second.
I am calculated. I don't know. Thinking.
What we're saying about being a good person is some sort of highly functioning human being.
Yeah, it's a normal thing.
You're training your
It's a
kid
problem.
to be highly functioning. Why can't that in itself be a good technique? If we're saying that idea of
How is that taught?
is
I'm saying, is that taught by
functioning.
manipulation?
It's just a funny thing also to discuss.
You have to manipulate your
Because-
kid to be highly
You're assuming that you
functioning.
have to
You're
make sure
making your kid
kids
into a good person.
are
so he
sleeping.
gets
They're not falling asleep. So I'm saying that's
Well,
not
again,
not
that depends on
obvious
if
that
No.
they have to be
if
sleeping right
there
now.
are things that can be taught by
Is
manipulation.
that just saying,
Right, so
and it rather brings up the
by all
point.
means, 'cause
Because
you
at the end of the day, you need
But
a
to what extent
technique.
does manipulation
Because
alter
what kind of person you are. Just a kid's not sleeping. What should I do? I don't
Oftentimes people
know.
manipulate people instead of teaching them how to
I don't
do
think that
that,
says a lot about
teaching
what
them
kind of
how to
person you are if you don't
pretend.
know what to do. That's
It's
just
not the same thing.
know.
Manipulation always aims at.
I'm not sure.
Unless you say learning from your father, then you're
Right,
only
right,
learning
but
from
not,
that person.
but not 1 second. But
It's not
dragging
really
your
much
kid to
of
bed
a.
is not something that you're teaching necessarily by example. It's more like he just needs to go to bed and
No, you
wake
can
up in
teach
the
them by
morning.
example,
Come
sure.
back and be pissed off.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know. The point is that maybe if there's techniques that are unrelated to the kind of person you are, there might be such techniques. That probably are. I don't think those things are the important things in parenting. There might be such things that you could say some guy just had very bad technique, and okay, doesn't even make him a bad parent, because people have varying opinions about this. Should you? I know great parents actually that have varying techniques about things like this, and none of them are bad parents, because that's not what being a parent consists of. Maybe there are better ways to get the children into bed, and maybe not. Pretty sure that all the people with the high-minded techniques fail about as much as all the other techniques. Any research that was ever done probably shows that, but all the research is fake, so nobody knows. And whatever, that's not he's not a bad parent because of that. You could only be a bad parent in a way that's relevant to me by being a bad person. You could also say, like, in other words, it's like someone says he's a bad parent because he couldn't pay for my tuition. If he couldn't and didn't have money, okay. I mean, part of being a father maybe is paying for your children's tuition, but if you can't, you can't. That doesn't make you bad in like any moral sense or in any relevant sense.
Is parenting a moral thing, or we're not saying it's a moral thing?
I'm thinking of it as a human thing, yeah. Moral is just the same thing as being a good person. And good is in the same way as a car could be a good car. In some sense it would be a problem, yeah. But, okay, I don't know, let's get back to where I started.
For things like parenting for 1 second.
Yeah.
Maybe what we're doing is, maybe we should do this, maybe there's a better way, but what we're doing is telling you the ideal.
The ideal?
The ideal. Telling you what the ideal person would do. Which is why the therapist / whatever doesn't do it. Doesn't want to show the because they're actually not the ideal person. Not even clear. And it is a stereotypical thing. Right. They're saying the ideal person does this. And you're going to right away say, oh, you're not that ideal person. So it's like, okay, I'll remove myself from the picture. I'll tell you what the ideal person does. You want to know if I do it?
Right. You mean like it's like having
obviously, it would be better to have an actual ideal
person.
But
this
person
person
in front
is
of
still
you.
serving as the knowledge conduit for what a good person
True.
is.
Well,
It's
it's
100%.
mutually exclusive. For example,
we would
you
much
have a
rather
doctor
have the
that can
actual
go to
ideal
cancer
person.
that could heal cancer.
Right.
So you don't necessarily have to have it. I mean,
That's-
I could be a great listener, right? But a complete animal.
Right.
I know some of the
Right.
people
Right.
And the listening is helping me
Tell you,
get to the
make sure you
next.
pay attention.
Yeah, but I think that there's a
basically saying
difference
if you saw a
because
good person, you would see
when
you pay
you
attention to this
want
kid. It would be bad for the
at
kid.
least in terms of
Maybe
You're
we
going
should
to try to emulate that ideal.
If
Now,
you're a
I
doctor,
don't know if he's doing it.
and
Yeah,
you want to
ideally
teach
should be because I
people
saw a
to
guy
be
doing
people,
it. Like,
you have to
like.
have an
But
accurate
they're trying to paint
knowledge-
that we think
knowledge
you're
of
like the
cancer,
person who gives
right?
your kid more attention.
And if you want to be someone that teaches people good, you have to be someone that can teach them the good.
Okay, so there's a lot of, tons of things about
If
this.
you have to know the good to teach it, and we consider, meaning if you are not a good person, that means you might to a certain extent lack a certain knowledge of the good.
Which is not necessarily true because a lot of us know what's good, yet we hardly act on it.
So at least in this class, we've often entertained the idea that maybe
We just don't know.
being a good person, that acts of not being a good person are acts of not knowing what the good is. I don't know.
Here.
It's such an idea.
Here. Anyways, I don't know. I think also, for example, we have like things like so basically there's like technique teaching, which assumes that there are techniques, and maybe there are, but I don't know how relevant they are to what I care about. For example, and not only that, I would say something more than that. I would say that what you're saying is the ideal. Yes, you definitely. I would think there isn't a perfect perfect in the sense of complete parent, and probably almost the only way that can be taught is by like imitation. So if you go to his house and you watch him putting kids to bed for a long time, basically for a whole life, then you would know, and you do the same or something like that, or you'd learn from him, right? Then you would know how to be a good parent. Anything less than that seems to be missing. And secondly, the way people usually say that separate this is by assuming that there's techniques. Now the problem with techniques, which I call techniques of manipulation, is that those techniques every technique, by virtue of being a technique, can be used evilly. Right? So for example, which is why many, in my opinion, many of the people, I don't know who I'm talking, I know who I'm talking about and you don't know him, so it doesn't make a difference. But many of the people who present themselves as like experts on different human relations, like I'm a major mechanech, I'm a major shalom bayis guy, I'm a major, what other things are there? Is that all of them?
Relationship coach.
Yeah, same things. Many of them are psychopaths. And management. There's management, management teaching, whatever it's called. The third thing that I was thinking of, like the work context of that. And many of them are psychopaths. And they're psychopaths why? Because a psychopath is a person who is very effective. And actually, it's usually better to be a psychopath if you want to be effective, because normal humans have all these like pesky things called feelings.
Interest, right?
Right. Detachment is very useful for psychopaths. Unlike what the Buddhists think, that detachment makes you a tzaddik. Detachment actually makes you a psychopath. I mean, some kind of it,
What was the thing? The guy said I can
like
these
and like much of the Bhagavad Gita is about being a warrior. It's not about being a tzaddik. And okay, there's an ethics in that, but like, and all kinds of modern training, also the military training, is based on like making you less of a human and more of a soldier, right? Because if you're a human, then who knows, maybe you'll change your mind in the middle of the war, whatever. We need you to be more of a machine. Of course, a machine, like what the Rambam calls a shed, a machine that holds all the like sinister parts of humanity without any of the good ones. Because a machine doesn't have all this calculation and it can't do many things that humans do, or at least yet. But not a human in the sense of someone that deliberates and tries to think if what he's doing is good.
Detached instrumentalization.
Yeah, you instrumentalize, but as a human, because we need you to be a human. So we need human instruments. We can't have actual instruments, because actual instruments are not actually good for what we need for what we need. We're not as good. They're not as good enough tools for us. All right, and of course that's why some of the modern things is trying to take away the humans out of the equation. But the point is, now that's why the training. This is why Socrates was so against lawyers, right, or rhetoricians, right? Not you.
Poets.
Yeah. No, but that's the concept. The concept is.
Yeah, using the vehicle.
The concept is that these are techniques. Of course, there are techniques.
Right.
That obviously, as people are going around making a lot of money on teaching those techniques. And the problem is that those techniques don't actually make you a better parent, they make you a better manipulator.
But doesn't everyone manipulate on some level, and everyone use techniques naturally? Meaning, you're just saying the learning of more techniques is an issue.
I'm not saying it's an issue. I'm saying that it has to be.
Doesn't necessarily.
I'm saying that there. Look, I'm saying that there's. That the learning of techniques is not the learning of the good. It's learning of something different. Now, techniques are maybe it's value neutral. Maybe like if you use the gun to kill a bad guy, it's a good thing. If you use it to kill a good guy, it's a bad thing.
Right.
But just when you say someone is a bad warrior, in the sense of he doesn't know how to use his gun well, that you're not judging him as a person. You're judging him as a kind of machine that's supposed to shoot accurately, which is of course important if you don't want to lose the war. And assuming, but it's not going to solve the question of the war at all, right? This is why nowadays we have all this confusion about like he's an expert. Something expert, there's all kind of experts, and we assume that they can tell us what to do. Experts can't tell us what to do, can always tell us, given a certain goal, how we should get there. Right?
So they only deal with the non-human parts of the thing, basically.
With the means and not with the ends. And humans are the kind of things that consist of ends or goals, right? That's why we have all the, right? That's why I'm like, I think that I actually have experience with this. Many of these like management courses turn out a bunch of evil people that it would be better for them and for the world, for their souls, right? Not for their money in their bank account, which also, by the way, because whatever, if you're a Ganav, then usually you lose in the end. Or it's not always, but gets it. You have to have self-control. But often they turn out people that are evil. Because like the mazel of the world is that most people are both. Even though most people are somewhat evil, they're very slow and dumb, most people, and therefore they're not very effective with their dishes. I know many such people. And if they would just be smarter, like, and we have these courses that try to make you smarter, but they don't really make you better. They make you smarter without making you better, and then we suffer from them. Make sense? And this like bothers me. It literally bothers me. I was at these courses.
Proportionality between a person's goodness and their efficacy, which I think is a problem. When people are too good at things when they're not good enough people.
Yeah, there's supposed to be where there's supposed to be like an esotericism. There's supposed to be like a law where you're not allowed to go to a management course unless we test you for good midas.
Well, like you shouldn't be able to have kids unless we see if you're a good parent.
Maybe people wanted to do that. Yeah. Oh, you shouldn't. In other words, the teaching of Torah, of the how-to knowledge, should not be disconnected from the what for knowledge, right? And that's why we have all these ancient ideas of we don't teach Torah to someone who's Talmud Sheni Hagen and the Rebbe Sheni Hagen, and not because, like you say, what do you mean it's a mitzvah to learn Torah? Yeah, but learning Torah also, like it says about women, right? You don't. There's like all machlokas if you teach Torah to women. And the reason why not to is because it's assumed that these are people that don't have enough training of how to use the knowledge that they have. And they're going to use it for a bad reason. They might as well be better off dumb or not knowledgeable. And so on. And it's not only about women. Most people, by the way, I wonder about the most of men that learn. You're just supposed to learn a kalachim, like what's going on. Yeah. So how does this connect to what I was saying?
have in city, you see people using landis in the grocery store, and it's not pretty.
They're using it, yeah. I like one. I didn't make a Kenyan yet, so I can. Yeah.
So I could take 5 things off the shelf. My kid could start eating the chocolate bar before he gets to the register. If I do that, too.
That's true.
Parenting. That's a parenting thing.
Parenting is being able to show your child it's okay to open the chocolate and eat it in the grocery. You do it, and then you give one to your child who does the same.
Maybe you're allowed to. You have to figure out. Probably depends on the minute. Point is, yeah. So the point is that, and this is all because now the way I see it is something like this. So now, if you ask those people, you go to the guy that's giving the course, and you ask him, so don't you realize that you're making the world worse? You're teaching a bunch of people that don't have the, like you're teaching them how to use a gun without the safety. Actually, safety is not enough. You have to actually, before, we have gun, we have yeah, exactly. The government gun lesson should not be just about safety and whatever. It should be knowing, basically you have to be a philosopher because you got to know who to shoot. And we don't know who to shoot, so you're just teaching them how to shoot, right? It's whatever, trust me, wait for me to tell you who to shoot. That's what's missing in all the trainings that we have. And just example, the shooting training is a very clear example, but everything is like this.
Did you just,
Who to shoot? Yeah, the problem is that those movies are made by evil people usually. See, this is another one of the very weird things where right, Plato is denigrated for this, but it's absolutely right. We're again, going back to the celebrity kind of thing, right? We have all these people that we allow to teach us about, well, not in a direct way, in a sort of sneaky, indirect way, in the image way, in the mythic way, right? In the poetic way. We allow them to teach us about what is good, what is the good, and nobody vetted those people. I have no idea. We only vet them for talent, for technique, and then the moment you know how to make a good movie, we let you write to your movie whatever you want. Well, not entirely, because there's some whatever, all the politics about this. No, critics are not, there is, whatever it's called. All kind of different pressures. But, yeah, there isn't, and the problem is that nobody really knows. You can say, okay, all Goyish things are bad, and who knows about the Yiddish things? What difference does it make? So, yeah. That's a different thing. The point is that the answer to this would be that I want to go to a teacher I want to be that kind of person. That's why the word person is very useful, because we still usually think of person as a whole thing, as one thing. And you say, okay, I want to, and this is why people often say, right, like you said, the marriage therapist doesn't have a good relationship, so something is wrong. You're well, no, but he has the knowledge of how to have a good relationship. And I saw someone saying, well, he usually has a lot of knowledge of a lot of failed relationships, so he has more experience than you. A friend that would say, you should come to me for marriage advice because I've done it 3 times, most experience. But that seems like something off with that because of this problem. This is all examples for the problem that I want to. At least now there's different reasons why this happens.
At best, these are classes about how to get what you want and keep the other person quiet in a relationship. That's what these marriage courses
some of them
are attempting to, or
I'm not sure what they're attempting to do.
Everyone into happiness. Well, not happiness. That's a big word.
Yeah, I don't think that you could do any human thing without being a good person. Even is being a good person enough? I sort of think that, yeah. But it's hard. I mean, it's not enough in the naive sense, because being a good person, that would be right. You say well, I know this leader of some community he's a good guy, but he does every mistake and he ruins a bunch of people's lives. And I would say, well, so he's a good person. What kind of a good person is he if after the first time he should have maybe he made one mistake, but after the first time he should have realized that there's messing up and there's something wrong, and he was no, but I'm doing Leshem Shemayim, so that's not an excuse, right? That's not a good person. That's just
even just getting over technique, you should know that he's bad at the technique, so stop doing technique. Just be a good person.
Well, I'm talking about the person that doesn't have the technique. We say he's a good guy, but he keeps on making the same mistake.
We can agree that there are techniques that can take do we agree that
There may be even techniques that make you a good person.
What I'm saying is, but let's say let's say you know exactly who to shoot, but you're terrible at using the gun.
Right, you need to know how to use a gun, 100%.
And to a certain extent, that also falls under the first category, or at least don't shoot until you know how to use it. Right? Meaning part of teaching people who to shoot is, first of all, you should only shoot these people, and second of all, only when you know you thoroughly can.
Well, yes.
It's not going to be as disconnected.
Right?
I would assume that that's part of the morality.
So
like
part of being a parent is not just knowing.
Yeah,
how
the
to teach your
technique.
kid, but also knowing to teach it in a way that what you are trying to exemplify.
Knowledge of the technique is important.
It's not disrupted in its conveyal, right?
The knowledge of the technique must, of course, like we're saying, like there's this example of the people that are like, therefore I could make whatever mess I want because I have a good intentions in my heart. No, I don't think a good person is a person with good intentions. You see, this is another one of the creed. This is because of this disconnect that we have this thought. Like, I'm trying to put these things together, not to say that we could divide them extremely. The opposite. No, you're not a good person. Well, you're not a good soldier if you're only like, I only want to kill the good bad people, but turns out I know how to aim, I end up usually killing everyone. Well, then you're not a good soldier. Because a good soldier is like, there's a gufan and I don't know how you have to find like fancy way of describing this, but it obviously includes both, right? It's not
as disconnected in this. In reality, when we're talking about the person.
No, it often is. The soldier is the obvious example.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Part of knowing who to shoot is also knowing how to shoot them.
Yeah, you would also say something like, if you would take your responsibility of shooting the right people seriously, you would go to a lot of aiming classes, because part of killing the right people is aiming at them, right? And not aiming, and not like, whatever, right? And the same way, like if you want to like help your children, maybe there's some techniques that you have to know, and you don't want to ruin them, so you're going to care about it, and you're going to find out what yeah, maybe. No, I agree. I actually agree, you see? I don't disagree. I just don't. Then you go to the parenting class, and you meet a guy that's a horrible parent, but he has good techniques, then you would say, wait, something is wrong. I want to go to the guy that actually is a good person. I think this is maybe the thing.
To be taught how to do it, and you're not looking to be taught what it is to do it. If you, let's say, already know, let's say you've had a great ethical teacher, right? Yeah,
so but this becomes complicated. Then we get into the questions of Remar, like could you actually separate it, and do you automatically do you automatically learn the bad parts too? I think somewhat you do.
As an independent question, is there such a thing as a technique without like an implicit like ethic in it? You're saying that technique can be detached. If it can be detached, then you need a teacher for virtue and you need a teacher for technique.
Yeah, I think you need a virtuous teacher of technique.
Right.
Because otherwise he's going to teach you anti-virtue.
Why? Because he'll teach you what? Technique isolated from...
Like they're like a...
Yeah.
But
let's say can have technique. Part of the hypothesis was that we can have technique isolated from virtue. So if I need one teacher...
I think that this is a very dangerous game. It's a dangerous game. I mean, in small levels, whatever the danger, but if you think of like higher level things like this, it's a very dangerous game. Why? Because I'm trying to think of like
technique employ a lot of virtue within it.
Well, firstly, if he's a manipulator, he's probably manipulating you too. You better be careful. This is one major problem with all the people that, in some sense, a lot of these teachings. In some sense, by the way, this is a serious problem. In some sense, and I'm very serious about this. In some sense, all of these classes, the parenting classes and the management classes and they're all basically human manipulation classes, right? And now you think, wait, this guy is an expert in manipulation or something. And he's probably the best. And often, that's the answer often to that question. Like, if he's such a great manipulator, why doesn't he manipulate his wife? Answer is that he's actually much better at manipulating students than wives. His actual technique, and that's why many how's it called? Like human. There's many people.
Financial professors.
Yeah, there's all kind of.
There's people that teach you to get rich, and they got rich off the
right.
courses.
And actually, like there's all these course. How's it called? Like coaching, self-help, whatever courses. And turns out that most of the people that go to the course become coaches, which means they're not actually teaching you. Because the real way to learn how to be a successful businessman would be sort of to shadow a real, actual businessman. And the guy that's just teaching it is probably although he says that he's teaching you how to be a businessman, he's actually telling you how to sell online courses, which might be a good business. But you know who I'm talking about. There's many of them. But his this is his actions are stronger than his words. And actually maybe even he's actually better at that. And that's some kind of talent, but he's not actually good at the thing he pretends.
Meaning.
Yeah, the kind of businessman that's good at selling things to you, but not telling you the things that you want, the people that you want to sell them. And it's like actually they realize what your vulnerabilities are, and there's basic techniques that they're doing, these people. That's one problem. That is one problem. I think it's a serious problem. Like practically, this is a very serious problem. I don't know. Like that's why you should always want to learn from people that don't want to teach. In some sense, it's weird.
Maybe a good person wants
At least, yeah. But they want to teach. I would say something like his main activity shouldn't be teaching, or like his in certain areas at least. Like yeah. If there's like mentorship, if you want to have like a mentor, you want to find someone that's doing something besides for being a mentor. Or maybe he's retired, whatever. There's ways of getting past this. I'm not saying. I actually do know. You have to be very careful. Advice is like the most dangerous thing. Be very careful. Our friend is against advice. What's her name? But you have to be very careful because most people giving you advice. I know. I get advice from people all the time, and most of them are selling something to themselves. And I'm not being cynical. I'm just saying like it's something you have to be notice. And I always like think, okay, like who is manipulating who? Maybe I'm whatever. Anyways, no, but there's a deeper thing. Okay, that's one problem. I think that there's a bigger problem. This is what I'm trying to get at, which is that, yeah, maybe it's the same. Connect to this, but something like the person who is selling you manipulation without telling you who to manipulate for what, like when it should be used, or even that is sort of making it, underselling that connection. In other words, you see, the question is like this. If you're a great person, let's say
Meaning it's not a skill that's unique to the task. It's just wholesale manipulation.
Right. The question is if there is such a thing as wholesale manipulation in the real good sense.
I think yes, but not in the taught sense, only as a recipient of the manipulation and the manipulator, right? Because let's say I go to someone for management courses, it would only be, and part of what they're telling me in the management course is you have to figure out a way how to like make your time with this person most profitable to yourself. I don't think that you can, that is ever like something that's taught without you actually being the recipient of that kind of harm. And I think these things isolated.
That's the first thing that we're saying.
They do take a life of their own.
I was by the worst form of this type of manipulation last night. I'm serious. I was at the face of evil. I was like, this is really special. He was manipulating and pretending to be the good person that you should emulate. He wasn't even being professional in a sense.
Okay.
If he was professional, it would be easier to swallow. But he was also, part of his manipulation was to pretend that he's the con. No, it was blatant. I thought it was, my son just had a raising campaign, and he does raising campaigns. No, this guy does raising campaigns. No, he's nothing to do with the yeshiva. He's nothing to do with it. And he's sitting there pretending to care about the yeshiva. It's obvious. He even at the end said, "I don't care about the yeshiva because I do this for a job." And he was like trying to manipulate us into raising money for the yeshiva by saying to the yeshiva, but he
was just fundraising people.
Blatantly not caring about the cause. Like it was not even like so that was like the
dedicated solely to the means.
Yeah, but his point is his
manipulation
the
virtue of the ends.
His manipulation is that he's pretending kind of to care in the middle also. And you should care the same.
Right. Maybe he's telling you that you care.
He doesn't care. It's not
maybe he thinks that you care, and he's trying to show you how to care.
Of course. He's blatantly manipulating too. He's also doing that.
Did he do a good job?
I almost want to kill myself afterwards.
Oh, you didn't do the page?
I get it.
Do whatever to do nothing.
I don't know. So wait. Well, okay. There's a lot of cheap manipulations that actually work, but that's different. Point is something else. I want to get at something deeper.
They're teaching you how to be a good parent without being a good parent sometimes, right? Some of these things are trying to impose shortcuts.
Yes, but I want to think of something even greater. Like, what does it mean when... Imagine that I want to be... I'm really wondering about this. Imagine I want to be a... What do I want to be? I don't know. Imagine I want to win a war. Right? Why do I want to win a war? Because I'm a good guy and I'm on the right side, of course. And it's important for me to win this war. It's good, right? It would be good for me, for mankind, for the universe, for the cosmos, for everything to win, that I win this war. Now, problem is that I'm a tzaddik. I don't know which side you hold a gun from. Definitely don't know how to do strategy. I don't know how to talk to the media, whatever. I don't know nothing. So what do I do? I know people that have done this, and I think that all of them turned out to be evil, or maybe they were evil to begin with. So it's hard to know. But I don't really know of anyone that has done this well. I'm trying to think, because you have to think through examples. I'm like having all kind of fuzzy examples in my head, which probably not saying them won't help. And so what do I do? So I've actually made this mistake once. So I had like some legal issue with someone, and I thought that actually turned out that person was much stupider than I thought. So I didn't need to manipulate them so much. It was more like a brute force thing. But I always think, okay, there's guys. What? What? No, doesn't make a difference. So I thought like this: let me hire the most corrupt lawyer. I'm going to tell him to work for me. I'll pay him his full price, and shine. And that's what I did. Turned out, like you're saying, he's corrupt to me too, and it's complicated. And like not only corrupt to me too, because he always has this whatever. He's corrupt means that he doesn't really work for you. He works for this whole team, and you're not whatever. Point is, that was not that was an example of the previous thing again. And then I hired some less corrupt and like sincere lawyer and got better. I fired the guy. But what if I'm something like different? Like I want to be a lawyer. Like I want to win the war, right? So I don't know anything about winning the war. So I'm thinking like, okay, so I already am a good person, right? I already have good goals, okay? But I don't have good means. I don't know how to raise an army. I don't know how to organize the strategy. I don't know nothing. So I go and I hire the biggest Nazi, whatever. Nazi is just a code for evil, right? I hired Rommel. And he's known to be like this great tank strategist and everything. And I'm like, okay, when you worked for that guy, you're doing bad things, but now you're going to work for me, and you're going to teach me or work for me how to win the war. Now, what is wrong with this? Does it work? Do you have any good examples of this? I mean, there's
isolate technique, basically.
The United States did this with some famous Operation Paperclip, yeah. And there was the scientist that said, I don't care where, that's the prime example of the means without the ends. Like they asked this guy who's making the missiles, like first you were making missiles for the V2 and now you're making it for NASA or whatever. And it's like, well, my job is to get the missiles up. I don't care where they go down.
I mean, for example, let's say like you copied the Germans' techniques of gas chambers to kill Nazis. Like it's an effective way.
Is it effective? Yeah. So I'm thinking more of like the effect on my soul, right? Maybe it's effective,
right,
but maybe
certain types of techniques only come out from certain kinds of ends.
Right, and maybe
assume that you can isolate that is the mistake.
Basically.
Yeah,
right.
I'm very not sure about that.
I was isolating technique from the origin from an endpoint, but I think it's also, and I think that's easier to conceptualize. But then I think there's another caveat, which is can you isolate technique from a start point?
I think that's at least a very dangerous game to play.
Certain types of certain kinds of evil, I think, tend at certain kinds of results which produce.
Yeah, because maybe the ends and the means are not actually as separate as this whole system is pretending. Maybe every mean or almost everyone is going to be defined by the kind of thing I want to do. Right? We can have silly examples, like maybe gas chambers are actually never good, not because there's like some categorical evil, but because they're actually only good if your goal is to kill as many random people as possible, which no good people should ever want. Although someone will claim you're going to win the war, actually you're only going to win the war in a certain way, which is evil. The real way to do it is something else. Maybe something like that.
Right,
or maybe...
Atomic bomb.
Right, exactly. This is the kind of thing
simple,
that is
serious question. What?
Meaning there was this thing, like people were trying to revive the category of like tuna for nuclear devices, saying that like this is not something that either side should have, not because this is just an instrument of evil. This is an indiscriminate method.
Well, maybe it's okay, right, but that's like too Kantian for me. Maybe it's I want to think of maybe it's something like
because of
what is my actual goal, and is it possible to get at the goal with so let's think about my soul first, okay? And because I think that you can't separate these things entirely. let's think about my soul. Am I going to still be a good person after going to Ramlal's course in tank warfare? And what difference is it between the guy on the right side? Actually, being on the right side doesn't make you a good person, right? You have to actually be a good person. But let's assume that it's just taken as an example. I sort of think, this is a problem, but I sort of think that an experience, but I don't have like a good theoretical argument or such a good argument. I think that an experience, this usually doesn't work. Meaning to say, the badness of the person who's like, how do you say, amoral at least, doesn't care about, only cares about being effective, overpowers somehow the people that I think that they're using him for good. This is just something that happens often. I don't know why it happens, but it happens.
But people buy this detached theory.
Yeah, let's say, for example, let's say I have a yeshiva, okay, and I know many cases of this. Let's say I have a yeshiva, okay, now I'm Rosh Yeshiva, I'm good at teaching Gemara, hopefully. Maybe I'm good at giving Moshe Drashas, probably not. But I'm definitely
good at manipulating people to come to yeshiva.
Maybe not. No, maybe not. That's what I'm trying to talk about. Maybe I'm a yeshiva. Actually, no such yeshivas. Maybe I'm a yeshiva. I'm very good. I'm a very serious person. I'm good at learning. I'm very not good at convincing boys to come to my yeshiva. So what do I do? And there's people that have this job, and you hire them, and you say you're gonna be a recruiter for my yeshiva. Rasham, they call it in Hebrew. I don't know how it's called in America. And you're gonna go to the schools and to the things, and you're gonna sell them my yeshiva, and you're gonna do whatever.
Whatever it takes.
I don't care what you do. I want 20 guys from my share. You do. I pay you. You do it. Does it work? In other words, does the yeshiva be? Well, did it?
Listen, no one has everything. No one has everything. Meaning, no one's good at everything.
I don't think no. But the question is he? Let's say.
Meaning, it's by sending a shaman instead of a Thomas to do it.
Yeah, no, for something like this, maybe.
The difference,
what?
Right? I mean, the difference would be sending a student who is good at such a thing, and telling the student, teach what I have to say, and let the.
So I sort of think there's a difference between doing it in a professional way and doing it in a not professional way. Meaning to say, if of course I'm not good at getting bochrim and I need someone, so I'm going to have, like he says, a student or one of my chassidim that is good at that, and he's going to go do it. And now since he's my student, so I made him good somehow, he's a good person, he will do it in a different way than the professional guy. Meaning to say, he is not going to try to convince people who it's bad for to come to my yeshiva. Like if he knows someone who it's going to make him worse somehow, or it's not a good fit, he's not going to convince him. He's going to say, "Well, I'm why? Because my goal is to have a good yeshiva. It's not good at these people that don't match. So not good for them. Maybe it's good for the yeshiva, but not good for the students."
Are you nervous about the lack of ethics, meaning that he's going to eventually cause harm, or the lack of truth when he's talking? Is the dishonesty that bothers you, or you feel like it leads to automatic, wronging people?
Yeah, I think it would. Let's say, maybe not to lie. I don't know if they're like actual lying. I'm not trying to be categorical. I'm not saying there's some things that you should never do. What I'm trying to say is that there are some things that having people that are amoral or having learnings that are amoral, right? Let's say I go to the guy's course and he teaches me his techniques, and I do it myself, is going to sort of break out of its like supposed professional lane where it's supposedly only working for someone else. That doesn't actually ever work for someone else. It always, I would say something like this: evil has its own goals, and including amorality, which is a kind of evil, and isn't actually goalless like it sells itself. Part of its of its evil is that it sells itself as goalless. But we're just about techniques. You're not. You are about winning at all costs. You see, you do have a goal. You're just lying to me when you say, you are about winning at all costs. Now, winning at all costs is a bad thing. It's only good for the right people. It's not good in itself, right? And now you're basically somehow contaminating me with this bad midah of winning at all costs. Winning at all costs is a bad midah. We could find, I don't know what it's called, something like ambition or over-ambition, whatever. There's words for this in like ethical theory. And that's a bad trait. And that is the actual trait that you have. And now it happens to be like what happens when I've seen this happen, right? When you go to that guy, he's like, I just want you to recruit people. And he starts telling you, look, in order to recruit people, you got to have some kind of branding, which means that instead of saying this by your share, you have to say something else. And then I'm like, excuse me, you're confused. Actually, people literally come to me and say these kind of things, right? And there's a good way of okay, it's complicated, but let's just give the like simple way of it being wrong. And I'm like, wait, you're confused. I want to have a yeshiva because I want to teach certain things. You wanted just to be yeshiva so you could hire someone else for your yeshiva. That wasn't the goal of this one, right? This one was to do this. Well, you say you have to package it differently, you have to someone. Okay, that's more fuzzy. But if you like, to some extent, you say like, well, in order for me to do my job, and like marketers sometimes say, well, I have a bad client because he's not selling something that I'm good at selling. I could sell. Well, okay, but then is the marketing leading the product, or is the product leading the marketing, right?
I think
that's something that happens.
The people that if you want to learn how to, like, if you consider yourself a good person and now you'd like to add to that repertoire by being a good manager, and so you go to managerial courses that teach you how to strictly use people to the extent that you can farm their time. I think even thinking in this way is bad.
Maybe. In other words, we're saying thinking in a non-end, and with the way of thinking which doesn't care about what the endless, goal, non-good goals, not like the instrumental thinking, which doesn't care about the goals, is in itself something that I actually think so, because it's hard for me to do, being like the kind of idealistic whatever person. Like, I don't know. It's very hard for me to do things that I don't believe in.
Does the pursuit of money, hypothetically, just an example, have to actually be for good? Meaning, as long as you're not harming other people. Meaning, for example, like what Shmuley's saying, you're manipulating your whole team to do X, Y, and Z just for the pursuit of money, which money is not necessarily a good thing. You just want money.
No, but if I let's say want to be
maybe having money is a good thing. I don't know.
One second, if I want to be a good manager in the same way that I am a good person, then I want what's best for the members of my team. Part of that is to be productive. Part of that is to give them the space to tend to their families. Part of that is to teach them how to take a lunch break if I think that's something that's just good for them to prosper as human beings, right? You could be a good manager the way you'd be a good person, and not be a good manager the way you'd go to a marketing course, a management course that would teach you how to squeeze people for their time, right? Even though they'll tell you, look, it could be anyone's time, then you should only manage bad people because those are the people who you should consume all their time. I think that the act of squeezing people for time is well optimized to be done to everyone, including the people who don't deserve to have it done to them, right? That to me is like, I think what I think is part of the problem, like with like these things is they tend to be very easy to use on good people in ways that techniques that are just not techniques, but ways of doing things as an extension of being a good human tend to not be very workable on
bad people.
Right, they're not even very universalizable, and like if you want to manage someone as a good person, I don't think you cross half the pitfalls that you do if you want to manage them as a good manager. I just don't think so. I think you tend to be more considerate of their time and want their betterment instead of wanting their product. Those goals are not necessarily not aligned, but if you and not only that, but I think that having a person be a good managee, or whatever you want to call it, and have them and treat them as a good person, don't necessarily come into conflict until you go to management courses. And I think once you do, those things can become radically detached.
Well, because the management course
is and not only that, in the way that it isolates and highlights it, it also seems to show you that this is the best alternative.
But that's only because these management courses are, I guess, like what Yitzchok's saying, by people that don't necessarily care about the human being.
I think that's part of it. But
because hypothetically, you could teach people how to manage.
It affects the product, the teacher, and the taught. Yeah.
In other words, it's weird if you read like the classic, human manipulation book called "How to Win Friends and Influence People," and it's really weird that he doesn't like even for a moment think, "Wait, this is how you create Hitler." Literally is. Like, it doesn't even like have a warning, please use it only for good purposes or something. You just assume that you're a good guy because he's basically talking to some kind of salesperson always. And like, of course, the best thing for your company to make most sales. I don't know, maybe it's a worse bad thing. Like, and there's like, just like totally unconsciousness of this, like something weird about that.
It's literally how to manipulate.
What?
How to manipulate.
Yeah. Doesn't call itself that, but that's what it is. Yeah, it's based, but it's
but I think that
it's very ballsy
yeah, people say it doesn't work anymore because people have figured out that they have to be more subtle. But
Right, but listen, everybody essentially is manipulating people. Essentially, when you have a conversation.
Right. So what I'm being is not saying that you could be. I'm not being naive in the way that I don't. My claim is not that you should be naive, and say that you could be effective without knowing how to be effective. What I'm saying is that you shouldn't either be naive in the other way and believe that your mental health advisor is actually a tool because he's a human and humans are not good at being tools. It might be true for actual literal tools. I wonder. People are. That's another thing, but it's definitely not true about no humans are actually only tools, which means that they always have certain ultimate ends. That's the way humans work. And if a person sells himself as a tool, his end is probably evil. Not always, but probably. Something like that. This is all a shir on Plato. Plato says, I have to finish. Plato started this thing like this. This is, I really wanted to finish. It says like this, listen. It says like this in book 2. In book 2 it said like this. He got into this discussion about justice, and we figured out that we don't know what justice is. So in order to explain what it is, we're going to make a very big picture of justice. Like he says, we're going to blow it up like in big letters. And the biggest picture of justice is a city. So now we're going to figure out how to do a city. Now we figured out that it's not productive, it's not good per one person to do many things. Because if, like, for example, you're a farmer and a cattle person, you're not going to do either of them well. So we got to have people. We should separate what's called separate division of labor, right? Okay. Now, turns out that in order to have a city, you need to have an army. At least if you don't have a big city, it's a little more complicated. So they need to have these people called guardians, which are basically warriors. They're going to protect the city from the other people that have the same thing. They also want to have a city and be the biggest city. Okay, so now it's just like it's not good for a farmer to be a herdsman too. It's not going to be good for a soldier to be a farmer because, like, most of the year he's farming and then suddenly beats his plows into swords and becomes a soldier. That doesn't seem to be a good idea because he's not going to be good at either. So we got to have these people that are only soldiers. Okay, now we take this argument to the extreme. I'm going to say therefore they need to be, he called them guardians, not soldiers. They need to be leaders, guardians, from the moment they're born to the moment they die. Okay, now so we're going to give them the training for that. Now we have another issue. Okay, we're going to have to later we'll find out. We have to choose them, we have to breed them for that, and so on. Now we have a new issue, which is like this: that what kind of person is a soldier? Right, we're going to make this person to be purely a soldier because the most effective or the best way for each person to be is to do only one thing. Anything that does more than one thing is not going to be good at any of them. This is very important life advice. But anyways, but it's also like his basis of his whole theory of ethics, which is that every part of the soul should do one thing, and the one thing that is the best for. But okay, I'm just giving you the secret quickly. Point is, and now so a soldier is going to need to be in other words, we need to be this whole person to be a soldier, to be the soldier.
Or to eat as a soldier, to talk
sort
as a
of,
soldier.
yeah. Right? They're, of course, he's going to do a bunch of other things, but they're all going to be directed towards this goal. Now, what kind of a person is a good soldier? So, Socrates says there's a contradiction here. A good soldier is a very hard person, right? It's going to be like a Russian soldier, like killer. Okay. Problem is that that's not actually correct. Why is it not correct? Because that person will kill his mother. Now, if you remember that the reason we have soldiers is to have our city prosper, not just to be killing everyone. This is not the war of all against all. This is the war of establishing a good city, right? So we don't actually want our soldiers to be totally soldiers in the temperament of a soldier who is like this kind of hard, cold killer person, because we need them to be nice to their families and nice to their own city. We don't want them even, and this was by the way, like an ancient conflict, like in Rome, the soldier, you're not allowed to cross the Rubicon with your army, whatever, famously, right? Because in the city, we gotta not kill anyone. You only kill the other guys, right? Big problem. So now we have a problem. So we want every person to be the best soldier, but being the best soldier doesn't seem to work. We want to sometimes to kill the right people and not the wrong people. This is literally what he says. In other words, we want him to be good to his friends and bad to his enemies. So he's going to be a good person or a bad person, or we could say a soft person or a hard person. There's the contradiction. How do you do it? So Socrates goes and says like this: I know some. It seems like a contradiction in nature, right? Like what kind of nature is he gonna have? So he tells himself something like this. Well, I know a natural thing that does this, known as man's best friend. So dogs seem to be good at this. They're pretty good at being aggressive at the people that they're not their people, and very nice to their owners, like we say, soft and yeah. So basically, we need to be like dogs. Okay, so in other words, the dog there's some kind of knowledge, right? The dog sees a guy or smells him, whatever, and he knows this is my owner. I'm going to be nice to him. This is not my owner. I'm going to bark at him and bite him and chase him and so on. So, which means that our soldiers not enough that there's not like some kind of nature of a soldier that we have to teach them. We have to teach them the thing that this dog has, which is philosophy. Guess what? The starting of education of philosophy is to be more like dogs. Something very funny. This must be one of the jokes of the Republic. And why? Because dogs are this kind of thing that have this discrimination. They're good. They're very nice to one guy and very not nice to another guy. And this is the main thing we need. So therefore, we're going to need to teach our people, our soldiers, our guardians, we're going to need to teach them how to be the kind of person who could like switch his attitude based on discrimination, based on knowledge, in other words, he's going to be led not by his passions, not by his, like what we call usually by his nature, but by his mind, by his... Dogs do this by some kind of cycle or knowledge they have, and humans will have to do this by this. And this is what leads us into this whole thing, that we need to be the kind of people that can have their rational mind control their passions. Because otherwise you can't be a good soldier. Or at least the people that are going to be there. Yeah. Now, that's his Tifel Torah. And then we go on, how we're going to educate them, and we're going to make sure that they don't get too excited ever, and all kind of things because of this thing. Anyways, that's the sheet. And this was all the explanation of that, what we discussed until now, right? That was to explain this. That you need to... even a dog isn't just like a biting machine. It's also a kissing, whatever, I don't know how you call the thing that dogs do.
Loyal.
A loyalty machine, or like a nice patting machine, whatever. So which is it? Well, it's both, but it's based on the goal, based on the person in front of it, right? And this is a whole different kind of education, right? This is a whole different kind. Of course, you're going to learn you have to make them into teach them how to fight. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is to teach them how to know who to fight, right? And that's that's a whole different kind of human being. You see, there's a kind of human being. There's a whole third kind of human being. Or maybe like this is the rational part, or whatever. There's a kind of person who, well, you know, it's Tanya called Me'ach Shal Talalev, right? Who controls, who can lead, who can control, or control is not such a nice word, like direct his passions and actions by the object, right? If I see my wife, I'm going to love her. If I see someone else, I won't. Very complicated for human beings. Very complicated for animalistic part, right? Because of like, I love, so what's the difference if it's my wife or someone else? Well, yes, but it's different because this can have a goal of having a family and whatever, and if you do it to someone else, you get into problems, you get into trouble. And this is why all people have to be philosophers, because otherwise or you can say, like, just be an ascetic. Well, that's not the point either. You have to, so the only solution is to have discrimination. And which means that there's not going to be any way of doing any of this without deciding who is it for. And that's where all education is going, of these people at least, is going to be based on. Yeah, that's how it's a share in Plato. Shine. Now we're going to go to sleep. You could shut it. It's too long.